Is this on?
Yeah.
Microphone.
Okay.
And you don't need to move it. It picks up the sound quite well. And
Okay.
Press this button. It picks up the sound. You don't need to move it around. And when you're finished,
Are we all... Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this extraordinary overview and scrutiny panel meeting. The fire alarm procedures are as follows. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices down the main staircase opposite the lifts in the foyer. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green, and officers will assist you and advise you when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they're not used to make or receive phone calls whilst this meeting is in progress. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. There are a couple of requests to film the meeting, so I would advise that any member of the public that objects to the possibility of being filmed, that they may wish to take this opportunity to leave the meeting. I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured, and I urge anyone filming the proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. I have one request to speak under 20.1, that's from Councillor Helen Whitehead. And I also have two requests for public speaking today, and that's from Magdalena Korzak and from Simon Pengelly. So the total time allowed for public speaking is going to be 6 minutes, so equal that at 3 minutes per person, and we are only allowed to have two people speaking as per the Constitution and our agenda item. Okay. Apologies for absence. I have Councillor Moore. He's been substituted by Councillor Bayford. Councillor Scobie Jr. being replaced by Councillor Scobie Senior. Councillor Faruqi being replaced by Councillor Matterface, and Councillor Britcher being replaced by Councillor Boyd. Are there any more apologies?
Yes, Chair. I'm subbing for Councillor Austin today, who can't be here.
Okay, and Councillor Austin being replaced by Councillor Yates. Is there any more? Okay. Moving on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? And that's a no. Okay, moving on to the substantive item. Before we move on to that, I would just say thank you to everyone for attending this morning, members of the public, residents of Arlington, representatives of Freshwater, officers of the council and committee members for giving up their time this morning to come along to this meeting. This meeting comes about after this committee was approached by a member of this council who's a ward councillor and explained at length the issues that residents of Arlington are experiencing. It was felt that the issues for residents needed exploring further and that there were some possible serious consequences for Thanet District Council. The worst happened and the closure would be placed upon that building. Officers of Council had conversations with Freshwater and this meeting day was proposed and here we are all present. What I will ask is for members of the public, please, just to refrain from interrupting or shouting or any disruptions, booing, hissing or anything like that, please. While someone is speaking, we really want to just hear everything that everybody is saying. Okay, moving on to the substantive item, which is Arlington House, and I call on Mr. Porter to introduce that report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to run through some of the key points in the report that we've published and shared with you all. Before I do that, I just wanted to introduce the officers from the council that are involved in this work. As well as myself, we have Andrea Plant, who's our head of property, Ashley Jackson, who's the head of housing and planning, and Richard Hopkins, who is our private sector housing manager. I'm sure between the four of us, we would be able to respond to any of the questions you have about the council's role. I also like to say welcome to representatives from Freshwater, and thank you for attending today. Once I've finished introducing the report, I will pass over to you to introduce yourselves before passing back to the chair. That way, everybody will know, who everyone is and who to direct questions to. So, on to the report itself. So, firstly, kind of at a high level. The purpose of the report is really to provide the panel with a background to the issues at Arlington House and to talk about the focus of effectively what are three regulatory agencies that are involved in the regulation of building safety and housing conditions. And our focus very much is on resident safety and ensuring that buildings meet the required legislation and compliance in terms of safety. We have met regularly with the other two regulatory agencies, so that's the Building Safety Regulator and the Kent Fire and Rescue Service, and between us we effectively agree that we should collectively use the most expedient powers available to each of the organisations in coordination with each other. What we don't want to do is take enforcement or regulatory action that conflicts or overlaps with another agency and makes the situation more complicated. So we have been meeting with them regularly, and we did have actually our most recent regulatory meeting was yesterday afternoon, and myself and Ashley and Richard met with representatives from the Building Safety Regulator and the Kent Fire and Rescue Service yesterday afternoon. So firstly, on to the section in the report about the Building Safety Regulator. I think the first thing to say is they're a relatively new agency established by the Building Safety Act, and they are the lead regulatory agency for all buildings over 18 metres. The Building Safety Regulator at any point can call in buildings over 18 metres for the person responsible, the organisation responsible for that building to submit what's called a building safety case report. And they have, and when they requested a building safety case report from Freshwater, that was submitted and it gave the Building Safety Regulator, let's call them the BSR for speed, cause for concern, let's put it that way. And the two principal areas of concern that were raised were structural stability of the building and the condition of reinforced concrete built throughout the building, and fire safety, particularly in relation to compartmentation. They served two regulatory notices requiring surveys looking at those two issues. Both the structural stability and the condition of the structural concrete in the building, and the fire compartmentation throughout the building. I think in summary, the BSR's position at this point is that although they've seen survey information, they are not satisfied that Freshwater have sufficient understanding of the condition of the building or the fire safety arrangements throughout the building. And at this stage, their position, and we were told this, confirmed this yesterday, so this is up-to-date information, that they will be, are seeking risk assessments linked to the survey information and action plans linked to those. Effectively, how are Freshwater proposing to remedy the concerns that have been raised in the BSR's assessment of the structural and fire compartmentation information they've seen. On to Kent Fire and Rescue Service. So across Kent, we have a shared protocol with the Kent Fire and Rescue Service, which talks about which agency leads on fire safety regulation for which building. And in general, the local housing authorities, district councils lead on fire safety for all buildings under 18 metres, and the fire service is the lead agency for buildings over 18 metres, and the fire service work very closely with the building safety regulator, providing professional advice on fire safety issues. The Kent Fire and Rescue's position, and obviously this is a summary, is that like the BSR, they are not satisfied that they understand how the building would behave in a fire, and as a consequence to that, they have required Freshwater to implement what's called a simultaneous evacuation strategy. Simultaneous evacuation strategy means that in the event of a fire, all residents should evacuate the building immediately. It's been widely reported in the press about evacuation strategies for tower blocks, and the panel may know that in most tower blocks, the advice for residents is that unless the fire is in your flat or on your floor, you're immediately at risk. The safest place is to remain in your home. But when there's a simultaneous evacuation strategy, the position effectively is that the agencies are saying the safest thing to do in any fire event is to evacuate the building immediately. And so that's the position at Arlington House, and it's also the position at a number of other tower blocks in the district. So that obviously then leads on to a couple of questions. Firstly, in the event of a fire, how is everybody notified? And secondly, how does the responsible person for the building affect a safe evacuation? And for that reason, the fire service have required upgrades to alarm systems in the building, and for a time had required the operation of a waking watch service to alert people in the event of a fire and support an evacuation. We have learned recently that the waking watch service has been stood down, and the fire in the meeting we had yesterday with the fire service, their advice is that they are seeking confirmation from Freshwater about how people will be alerted and how they will manage a safe evacuation. On to the District Council's role. We have two roles, and the first one I will talk about is our regulatory role, so that is managed in the private sector housing team. We use legislation that's built around what's called the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, and Richard Hopkins' team visit dwellings or blocks of flats and assess those buildings against a whole range of potential hazards. And we do that generally where people have alerted to us to a problem in a building, or they have reported a defect with their building. And in this case, the BSR alerted us to their concerns. And so we have completed health and safety rating inspections of the whole building, and formulated a report about that following those inspections, and assessed the hazards that we identified. We identified a number of hazards, including Category 2 and Category 1 hazards, and if the panel have any detailed questions about those, obviously later in the discussion I'll pass that over to Mr Hopkins to advise about. Where there's a Category 1 hazard identified, we have a statutory duty to take action to try and resolve that hazard. And in this case, the action we've taken is to serve what's called a hazard awareness notice, bringing the hazards we've identified to the attention of Freshwater. So the next stage in that process would be then for Freshwater to advise us how they are going to address those hazards and effectively remedy them. The second role for TDC is in terms of property ownership. And since we published the report, I've had quite a few questions about this. So I think it's important to mention this and clarify it. So TDC is the freeholder of the whole Arlington site, including all of the land around Arlington, the arcade, the tower itself, the car park, the whole site. We have what's called a revisionary interest in the whole site, which means at the end of the lease period, the whole site, including any buildings on that site, return back to the council's ownership at the end. The lease commenced in 1961, although which was prior to the construction of the building. Although the final version of the lease was actually signed in 1965, the lease term started in 1961. At the time, the lease was with an organisation called Berners-Sunley Investments Limited, who constructed the building and then subsequently passed ownership on to Metropolitan, which passed part of Freshwater. So the key question out of that is, what powers does the council have under the terms of the lease? And I think the summary is that those powers are very limited, and there's some details in the report about that. Obviously, we are committed to using whatever powers we have to affect change where it's needed, but the powers under the lease are particularly limited. I think what is really clear and really important is that under the terms of the lease, Freshwater effectively own and manage the building and are the principal accountable person under the terms of the Building Safety Act. I think that's probably all I want to say by way of introduction. Obviously, myself and Andrea and Ashley and Richard are here to answer any questions, but I'm sure the panel will also have questions of our guests from Freshwater, and I'd like to pass over to them briefly to introduce themselves so you know who they are, and before we pass back to the chair. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Stephen Thorpe. I'm from HJP Surveyors. We're the surveyors overseeing and the external refurbishment works, which include the concrete repairs at Arlington House.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Martin Bale. I am the Company Secretary of Metropolitan, and I am its group solicitor. I also report directly to the chairman of the board, so that's me.
Good morning, I am Suzanne Calvo and I am the area manager for Area 7 at Freshwater.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Philip Lisserman. I'm an external consultant from LMSH in terms of general safety compliance, supporting Freshwater generally through safety compliance and supporting with Arlington as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, speaking under Rule 20.1, we have Councillor Whitehead, who is Deputy Leader of the Council, also Cabinet Member for Housing.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to everyone attending today. Overview and scrutiny allows us to look at issues that affect our residents in detail, but effective overview and scrutiny requires us to bring forward clear and defined actions relating to those issues, because as much as discussion allows a forum and understanding, what residents want, especially here, is clear communication, plans and timelines, especially in relation to Arlington House and MPRL, as one of the primary failings and complaints across all housing cases I've seen is a significant lack of communication, response, and public willingness to address concerns by MPRL. The historic head lease vastly limits our powers in terms of direct enforcement, but it does not limit our powers as part of the three organisations with regulatory powers. And although the Building Safety Regulator has primacy, we are able to act on their findings in terms of the serving of improvement notices once we have the information to do so. Mr. Porter has covered everything that we have done and can do in detail, and will answer any questions the committee may have along with other involved officers. We have been requesting the results of the structural surveys from the BSR so that we can look at the next stage of the regulatory process, and it is the results of these surveys that determine the available courses of action. We are not the building owner, but we are one of the regulators, and we will continue to take any action necessary within our powers to keep residents safe. My suggestions to scrutiny are as follows: that we contact the BSR again to request surveys, risk assessments and action plans that allow us to look at the next course of action. That we set up regularised meetings with a Better Arlington to discuss their concerns and the ongoing process. That we continue to use our combined regulatory powers to support residents in whatever way is legal and necessary. That we directly use our risk register to monitor the ongoing needs of Arlington House and the actions of MPRL to address them. The future and management of this building is of huge importance to residents and Thanet District Council. Along with the other regulatory bodies involved, we will continue to do everything that we can to ensure that tenants have the services and accommodation that they are entitled to in law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Okay, we move on to our public speakers this morning. First up, Mr. Pengelly. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity of addressing this meeting. I'm Simon Pengelly, resident leaseholder, resident lessee of Arlington House since January 2010. From the start, Met Prop's managing agents have been extremely difficult to deal with, all of them. But Met Prop is responsible for the behaviour of their agents, especially Highdawn. They failed to take proper note of matters raised by residents and lessees, and their mismanagement incurs safety, practical and financial problems. When asked to speak on this meeting, I drafted and typed 18 sample issues in about an hour. I could produce many more. Copies of my notes are available. I propose to try and speak on half a dozen, but we'll see how we go. Not in any particular order of priority or importance, but of examples of mismanagement. For many months, perhaps years, the fire action plan displayed on all floors referred people with limiting mobility, such as me, to seek a signed place of refuge. There are no such signed places. It was repeatedly pointed out to the managing agent that confusion and ambiguity in safety notices is dangerous. In the event of a visitor with limiting mobility hearing the alarm and reading the notice, they may well go in search of such a signed place, putting themselves in further danger. It was also pointed out that correction merely required printing 20 sheets of A4 paper. On the 7th floor, door 0079 fails to close properly because it catches on the intumescent fire strips of door 0078. The installation of the intumescent strips was not done professionally and was not sufficiently inspected by a Met Prop representative to be signed off. Industry recommendation is that 2 to 4 millimetres should be allowed. Other communal fire doors are similarly defective. This has been repeatedly pointed out to the managing agent. It was actually pointed out during a fire risk assessment and it was ignored. The service charge accounts are always years late and include excess costs that repeated first-tier tribunals have deemed unreasonable or unreasonably incurred to the tune of hundreds of thousands of pounds. I think that's my 3 minutes up.
Thank you, Mr. Pengelly. Okay, also speaking this morning is Miss Korzak. Have I said that right, I think?
Good morning. My name is Mags Korczak. I am a leaseholder at Arlington House, which has been my home since 2021. Councillors, be under no illusion. Freshwater's managed mismanagement of Arlington House did not begin in 2025, but commenced decades before. Indeed, Freshwater is infamous for being unscrupulous, evidence from the many references to it in parliamentary Hansard reports stretching back to the 1970s. A simple internet search will also elicit the extent to which the notorious neglect has cast misery and ruin up and down the country, from high street to high rise. I know that Arlington House is not alone in its safety concerns. There are thousands of freshwater leaseholders experiencing the same degree of frustration and anguish that we are experiencing. For a company with a minimum of 18 HRBs in its portfolio, yet simultaneously purporting to have little appetite for risk, it is playing a very high-stakes game. I am angry, I am stressed, I'm at my wit's end. Arlington House consumes my life. For the next 3 years and counting, we are going to be subsumed in litigation with Freshwater at their instigation. I have intense, debilitating rage about the situation we have been forced into. Having Freshwater as a landlord is akin to being in an abusive relationship. I am forever on edge, waiting for the next devastating accusation and reliant on promises of change that are soon broken. The sensible option is for me to leave, but they have made that financially impossible. Besides, where am I to go? Arlington is my home. However, I'm not limiting my fury at Freshwater alone, but I'm also extending it to you at Thanet Council, because it is both entities which are equally complicit in the situation Arlington House leaseholders find themselves in today. A block like Arlington does not become a public safety hazard overnight, nor does it over a course of a year. It has taken decades of consistent neglect on Freshwater's part and negligent, complacent indifference on the part of Thanet District Council as its freeholder. Arlington House is no longer the elegant tower that it was once promoted to be, but is a tableau of dereliction, decay and desolation at the gateway to Margate. It is the first scene that greets visitors arriving at the train station and the first thing that people see driving in on the Canterbury Road. Is this the vision of a safe, clean and thriving place the council is pining for? Tell me, how is it fair, just or reasonable that current leaseholders are paying the penalty for the council's continual complacency? Officers who are expected to have a firm grasp of the council's assets and responsibilities have demonstrated they have none. The OSC report is littered with anomalies, inaccuracies and contradictions. I recognised immediately the text provided by the Director of Police because he has written the same incomprehensible nonsense to me. Let me be clear. There is no expectation that officers should be academic experts on land law, but at the very least they should have the good sense to seek specialist insight rather than fabricate a new legal reality. It is this ignorance and audacity masquerading as authority which is intensely infuriating and erodes public trust and confidence in this council. But I want you to take time to think. What would a future public inquiry have to say about the council's oversight of its commercial tenant and its failure to prevent catastrophic collapse of its most prominent asset? Furthermore, if a Thanet version of the Grenfell Town Inquiry's web of blame were to be created, how would it look? I implore the officers in the council of this council to reflect very deeply on these questions, because one day soon they may not be so hypothetical. Thanet Council, as freeholders, you are custodians of the Arlington site for the benefit of local residents. It is not in the public interest to persist in the pretense that you have insubstantial rights to intervene in the dilapidation of our home. Let 2026 be the year that you finally take a stand, build fortitude, and start holding your treacherous tenant Freshwater to contractual account. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Korzak. Okay. Before we move on to questions from members, does anybody from Freshwater want to respond to anything you've heard so far?
Yes, I've heard everything that the gentleman and lady have said and taken a note of everything. It is our aspiration to return this building to a magnificent building that it once was, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes money and it takes time, it takes expertise, and it takes an awful lot of thought. It's very easy to criticise, and we are here today as a visible landlord. We are here to take the brickbats, we're here to explain what we're doing to the building, and we're here to assuage the concerns of the council members, the residents and the public surrounding Arlington and Margate. I reject entirely the assertion that we are a poor landlord. We have taken a building which was built in the 1960s. It was built in a prominent position, as we all know, on the coast. It is subject to the vagaries of the English weather and the winds coming off the sea. It has been a struggle. The building was constructed before modern housing standards, before modern fire precautions, and we are having to grasp that in its entirety. We are having to look at all aspects of the building. We have no as-built plans. We are having investigations carried out. We are having surveys. We are taking advice from various professionals. We are engaging with all of the regulators, and we are doing what we can as a responsible landlord. Now, when I was in private practice, the worst cases of disrepair I ever came across were landlords and freeholders that had gone bust, that had disappeared, and that were not accountable for any reason. We are not invisible. It is easy to draw up a list of complaints. In a building like Arlington House, I'm sure Mr. Pengelly could take more than an hour to draw up a list of issues. We are looking at those issues, and we will deal with them comprehensively and as soon as we can, with everything that there is to do. It is bound to take a lot of time and money, and at the end of the day, we have to raise that money. So all I can ask is that the leaseholders, the tenants, the public bear with us. We know what needs to be done, and we are addressing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Okay, members, I presume you've all got questions. First, going to come to my Vice Chair, David Green.
It's a question for Bob, really. The health and safety report that you mentioned that TDC had done, is it in the public domain? And when was it done, and what have you done with it since?
Yes, a copy of the notice that we served, the improvement notice, the hazard awareness notice, was shared with all of the residents in Arlington House and is publicly available.
Does that include the report?
The report itself, I'll ask Richard to comment on that. The health and safety rating system analysis includes calculations about the risk ratings of individual elements of the building. I'll ask Richard to respond specifically to that particular question.
And when was it done?
We've done 2 inspections, and I'll pass the question about the dates of those over to Richard. The first one was the one where we did the risk assessment rating, and then more recently we've inspected to check on progress against the hazards that we'd identified. Mr. Hopkins, do you have the actual dates of those?
Sure, yeah. The original health and safety rating system inspection was carried out in April last year, but it's a large building, and we needed access to other areas, and there were another subsequent inspections that happened after that. The notice was subsequently served in August last year. The calculations are quite complicated based on likelihood and severity of outcome. The actual calculations of figures themselves haven't been published, but I would have no objection to them being made available. But essentially, What underpins those calculations is what we found. And we served the hazard awareness notice in August last year, which I think it runs to about 19 pages, and that's divided into two parts. The first part describes all the hazards that have been identified, and the second part suggests all the remedial action that we would recommend. Yeah, I think that's...
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Okay, Councillor Pope. Councillor Figbo, no, Councillor Pope is our current Mayor of Margate.
I've got a statement to read from Tom Bradshaw from A Better Arlington. Firstly, apologies for not being here in person today. My trip was planned well in advance of this meeting being arranged. My experience on a personal level since Freshwater have taken back management of this building is very poor, but I'm writing as the head of the Residents Association representing our members. I'd like to draw attention to a few points from a letter that Martin Bale, Company Secretary of Freshwater, wrote to Polly Billington, our local MP, in response to a letter she recently sent challenging the management of Arlington House. The first point is around the matter of the Section 20, which is currently at first-tier tribunal level, something that could have easily been avoided had they engaged with us properly. We requested that and it was refused. Martin quotes, "We have provided detailed information on the costs and have fully consulted with the lessees." If that is the case, I would like to know why there are still countless questions and responses still awaiting replies in regards to the consultation asked by both leaseholders and A Better Arlington. Requested documents not materialising and emails ignored or simply replied, "Noted," or "Thank you, I'll come back to you," and then never doing so. Unless, of course, you chase it up, often numerous times before something is received. Good management, not to us. I'd also like to point out another quote where Martin says, "We very much wish to have a collaborative and constructive relationship." Well, if that is the case, why has no one from Freshwater in the last 13 months that I've been head of the Residents Association ever once arranged a meeting in person or online themselves, cancelled the meeting that I personally requested to happen, that took almost 4 months to arrange, costing leaseholders money and lost earnings? And why have they never once come to A Better Arlington and said, "How can we help you as the building managers? What issues do you have?" Instead, all they do is harass us with countless threatening toned letters, Section 20s, then they go silent on us, causing stress and anxiety, make countless mistakes, and send emails containing actual lies. Previous emails from Raymond Phelps could prove this, and also referring to recent residents' meetings that Freshwater ended early and walked out of because they couldn't hold court on questions around their own building, kind of sums up the fact that they do not want collaborative or constructive relationship. If they did, that wouldn't have happened. We've requested them to work with us and it's been ignored. They employ poor contractors we often have to call back because the work is not to a suitable standard or finished, some of which is still not rectified from 2025. We were promised a residents portal which was supposed to improve communication and has never materialised. We were told we were getting this as recently as November, so where is it? They issued us residents a residents engagement survey that contained completely incorrect information regarding building safety. Again, we've been told for almost a year now that this is being revised, but nothing has materialised. Much of their communication they've sent also goes against this current version. What are they going to do to improve the well-being of leaseholders, many of whom genuinely lie awake at night scared they're going to lose their home? That's not good management. So what are they going to do to reassure residents and turn it around? I'd also like to know why they have served no-fault eviction notices on some of the tenants, some of whom are pillars of the Margate community and definitely respected residents of Arlington House, who are now facing homelessness for no apparent reason. What is the justification for this? If you take a walk around Arlington House, you'll notice the poor, neglected state it's in. I don't need to reiterate, however, that when you walk around certain floors and you see water running down the walls because there's leaks that have been ongoing for many months, it all adds to the conclusion that Freshwater do not have good management or control of this building, and it needs holding accountable. As up to date as last week, there was an issue with the fire alarm maintenance companies trying to gain access. The caretaker was off on annual leave despite the company being told he would be on site, and a resident had to let them in. The fire alarm was sounding. Residents had no clue what was going off, and when confronting Freshwater on the phone about this via Alexandra Slattery, she told the committee member she wasn't aware of any testing this day, and it was to do with the rental side of things. This is another example of ongoing poor management and preparation on Freshwater's behalf. I'd like to finish with a quote from a meeting Freshwater had with Thanet District Council's private sector housing team last February, where in the email there are the words written, "Main conclusion is that the building owners do not have sufficient understanding of the building structure and condition. A year down the line, we are seemingly no better off. We still don't have building safety compliance certificates. Residents don't know whether or not we have any funding towards remediation costs, and despite the council's request to keep us informed, we have received very little communication on important matters. This has to change." Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Would you like to respond now, or should we just keep going?
Yes, I think that's a good time to respond. I haven't met Tom Bradshaw. I would be happy to meet him, happy to talk about a collaborative way forward. That's always our preferred way. The statement indicated that a Section 20 procedure could have been avoided. It can't. You have to, by law, consult your lessees to understand their feelings and views on proposed major work, which is what we were doing. So however much we had informal consultation, which we did as well, we couldn't possibly have avoided the Section 20 procedure. We did have to cancel a meeting in September, and the reason for that was that we had so many observations from the lessees that we needed time to take professional advice and to thoroughly examine every point that they made, which we did. It was necessary to cancel that meeting, because otherwise it would have been inappropriate to continue with it if we didn't have the fullest information and advice to hand. We did reschedule that meeting for the 26th of January. That meeting went ahead. I hear complaints that it was terminated early. I think that was because it got out of hand, and we had already been there for a considerable amount of time. We had already addressed the issues that we needed to address. We wrote to all the leaseholders to explain exactly what we are proposing to do with the major work scheme. As I've indicated before, that takes time to organise. We need approvals from the building safety regulator. We need to understand the scheme ourselves and to make sure it's for value and that it is the best scheme possible. We would never ask anyone to pay anything that we are not prepared to pay ourselves, and it should be recorded that we pay a quarter of the service charge. On that basis, we are inevitably going to seek and always hope to achieve the best possible value from the best possible contractors. What merit is there in us instructing incompetent contractors? It just doesn't make sense. We're paying a quarter of the cost. We want to make sure we get value for money, and we normally make sure that we do. In terms of what we're doing for the leaseholders, we are working on a scheme that will substantially improve Arlington House. It will address the structural issues, and it will address the issues on the surface, the windows, which residents complain are old and not wind and rainproof. It will address the roof, and it will make it a far better building. We are carefully planning that work. We are seeking the sanction of the first tier tribunal because we are aware that it is a lot of money, and therefore we have instigated litigation, as it has been put, solely in an effort that our scheme is properly looked at by a specialist lands tribunal, and it is considered the best possible scheme at reasonable value. So the litigation is that. So far as the no-fault eviction notices, there have been a few that we have found necessary to instigate, simply because we have found that some tenants have been extremely difficult in providing access to our flats for regulatory inspections. There have been some complaints also of nuisance. There was a subletting, and I understand that one occupant of a flat was arrested by the police. So these are normal landlord reasons for utilising that procedure. We're in the business of renting flats. We don't want to get rid of tenants unless there's a good reason to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bale. Yeah, I attended that residents' meeting at Dreamland. I thought it was just poorly managed from start to finish, to be honest. Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for the same gentleman. You're talking about a lot of work to be done on the building, and you obviously, the bulk of the people living there are leaseholders. So who's going to pay for the work? Are you going to send bills to the leaseholders? Is it going to be 50-50? Are you covering the full cost? Because obviously the kind of work that you're talking about is not going to come cheaply when you use, I quote, competent contractors. And anybody living in there who's a leaseholder, are they going to suddenly find themselves with a bill in the tens of thousands that they can't afford, which is apparently would have happened had you got planning permission to change the windows, but the planning committee here rejected that application. Thank you.
Well, all work has to be paid for. That is a fact of life. If I own a freehold house and my roof falls in, I have to pay for the roof. If I'm a leaseholder and the roof falls in, then I contribute towards the cost of replacing a new roof via the service charge. As I say, we contribute a quarter of the service charge and will continue to do so. Any work that needs doing requires funding. We, as I've indicated, are seeking the blessing of the tribunal, the Lands Tribunal, that such work is fair and reasonable and at a reasonable cost. I don't see we can really do more than that. I'm afraid that work has to be paid for.
So hypothetically, you send one of your leaseholders a bill which they cannot pay. What's the outcome of that for them? Because if, as appears to be the case, the building hasn't had the maintenance it should have had, you can't blame the leaseholders now for work that wasn't done in the previous 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, can you?
Make no mistake, buildings require work to be undertaken to them. It is not neglect that a building built in 1963 in the teeth of the weather needs work doing to it. I can't help that. It is a fact of life. We will need to raise service charges, and we are always prepared to talk to any lessees that have financial difficulties or any other difficulties come to that in terms of payment. So yes, we are always open to listening to our lessees, but the reality is, I'm afraid, that there is an awful lot of costly work required to this building. It is not previous neglect, because the lessees have never wanted to pay for any scheme of work that we have proposed. They have fought it in the tribunals, they have fought it at the planning stage. The replacement of windows that you mentioned, there was an application to replace the windows in 2024. Half of the residents supported it and half of them didn't. So where does that leave us? At the end of the day, this council refused permission, and so we are going ahead with a refurbishment scheme, which is, we believe, cheaper than actually replacing the windows, and it doesn't require planning.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Can we just dig down into this figure that you're going to ask tenants to pay? I believe it's £40,000 is the approximate figure. Let's take on board that the tribunals happened and they've okayed, they said it's 40 grand, that's fine. Can you just explain, because I was speaking to residents when I was at that meeting, I think this is one of their main issues is how they're going to pay and what are you going to do if they can't pay and what are their options. Can you just outline the options that are available to your residents in that building if they cannot pay that £40,000?
As I understand it, 2/3 of the flats in Arlington House are investment properties rather than owner-occupied. There are a number of owner-occupied, I probably about a third. we are raising this early so that there is an opportunity for residents to seek funding in terms of bank loans, extending mortgages if they have them, taking mortgages if they don't, making arrangements with a lender to provide the funds. So that is one way of funding it. That's probably the best way, the best suggestion I can come up with. I will obviously take on board the concern at the amount. It is a lot, but there is a lot of work that needs doing. We're not inventing work that doesn't need to be done. The work is largely forced upon us by regulators, by the need to address concerns with the structure and other aspects of the building, with the fire safety. There is still a lot of investigation going on regarding compartmentation. We need to fully understand how that impacts on fire safety. It is expensive. It is difficult to retrofit any building, particularly a building as old as this one, with aspects that meet current building safety regulations. It's not as if you're building a building from scratch where you can design into the building the necessary protections and safeguards. It's always a case that you have difficulties because a lot of these flats are leased, that we have to get access, we have to investigate what's been going on in those flats. Some people have made alterations without our knowledge. That raises a problem in itself. We're told that there are risers going up through the building, that people have stored in flammable materials, immersion heaters, things like that in the risers. We're told by the fire brigade that we've got to do something about that. When we write to lessees, they say we're being heavy-handed and we've got no right to make these requests of them. So it is incredibly difficult, and I think that many of the people that live there, it is difficult for anyone to comprehend the nature of the work and the investigations that need to be done. That's why I've come today with two professionals to try and assist the committee further in understanding what we're doing, how we're doing, and what we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I just want to you went off on a bit of a tangent there trying to substantiate the money that you've got to pay. And my question was, how are these people going to pay for it? And you said they suggested they might take out a mortgage. Well, we know that those flats are unmortgageable. You suggested they might take out some loans. Well, I'm looking at the people behind you, Mr. Pengelly. I'm not going to, no disrespect to you. They've of advanced ages. They probably couldn't even get a £40,000 loan if they went to their bank. No disrespect, as I say. What are their options if they can't raise a loan? You just suggested raising a loan. You didn't offer any other options. What are the other options available to these people if they haven't got £40,000?
Well, I suggest they make contact with us and we can have a discussion.
So the option is a discussion. That doesn't explain the options. What are you're the legal man. You're here as their company's solicitor. You must know what their options are available.
Well, there are options. They're not options I want to vocalise at this particular meeting. I think it is necessary for everyone to understand that there is a lot of work that needs doing. We
understand that. Can you just explain what the options are? You said there were options. Can you just explain to these people behind you, because when you said that, they're all shaking their heads. Can you explain what their options are for them?
Well, the option is they can sell their flat or,
That's just an unacceptable answer. I'm sorry. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Here we go. I'll try with this mic and hope I can be heard okay. Firstly, I'd like to thank Freshwater's representatives for being here today, because how I believe we've ended up where we are is years of lack of communication. We now have a massive communication, as we're hearing in this room today. There are umpteen different aspects here. There's changing regulations and legislation. You've mentioned risers that haven't got brakes, fire brakes and so on, and have been used, managing a block, and you've got 18 towers that you said that Freshwater are responsible. Each block is like a community in itself. 142 flats is a fair number of, it's a small estate if it was turned on its side rather than being vertical. There is no doubt, however, that we've got to look at how we got here, because if you want something to change, then you have to change what you do. I think it was Einstein said that a definition of lunacy is to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, which is what we seem to have been doing since 1965. Whether it was under the auspices of Margate Borough Council, TDC, everybody points the finger and blames each other, talks a lot about it and does nothing. Fine words, butter, no parsnips. I worked 25 years ago with a man who had to be interviewed because the windows were so unsafe in Arlington House, and this was a health and safety issue, that somebody, perhaps they were foolish enough to sleep on a cabin bed, but they actually fell out of the building because the windows, you may or may not have recollection of this, and one of their flatmates was interviewed for suspected murder, a chap I worked with. So, and that was not the only time people have come out of that building. So there are health and safety issues, there are building regulation issues. There's also the fact, and as you've said, it is on the coast. It will suffer salinity and saline air, the concrete cancer, the reinforcements. The way the building was built was precast in situ with panels on the end. So the standard of those concretes and the mixes will vary, which is no doubt why we've got the spalling and things. But what I want to ask you, you're saying that you want to deal with this, and I think too much money has been wasted on legal arguments and debate over the years that could have been put into that building. However, you have 1,000-year, I think it's 1,000-year lease, isn't it, on the building? Is it a 100-year lease?
I believe we have about 140 years.
140, sorry, my apologies, yeah. I'm confusing that with another issue. However, you have an asset there that needs protecting. There is an issue, and as you can see, the demographic of your residents is not in a position to deal with this issue, and they all have so you've got 142 different positions to try and reconcile. Surely, and I'm sorry, I take extreme offence on behalf of residents that I represent to be told, we'll sell your house. You sell yours. Yeah? Sorry, that's how it is. I understand personal accountability, but to tell someone, well, we haven't performed, so you have to lose the roof over your head, and the psychological benefit of a secure home, because that's what you're talking about. You see a property as an asset or a liability and something on a balance sheet. These people see it as their home, their safe space. And that is what is missing here, is the engagement of Freshwater, I believe. And I'm not talking to any of you as individuals, I'm talking to your corporate culture, is dismissive to these people. And that cannot be allowed. And to say that this has developed, I've got in my hand here a report from 15 years ago, and I'm just going to quote from it. There is currently a health and safety issue with loose concrete fragments able to fall at any time, which must be addressed as soon as possible, and or the areas below cordoned off. Sorry, 15 years, 10 years. Repairs to elements could be phased over a small number of years, but expenditure will be contained by a single programme of works. That's 10 years ago. I forget how long the nets have been around the building to catch falling debris and protect the ground floor, or the people, sorry? 3 years. So 7 years after this urgent report was produced for Freshwater, somebody went and put a mitigation to stop anyone getting lumps of concrete landing on them. It's still in place, but all we're doing is talking about it. And as I said, fine words, butter, no parsnips. Waffle achieves nothing. What we want to see is some action, and this community needs it. Because as you've rightly said, and ironically, it's quite a stunning building despite being incredibly ugly, because that's brutalism for you, and I think it could be an absolute example, stunning example as Sunley intended it to be. But it has to be Freshwater's responsibility to provide that facility and, if necessary, change the rental arrangements and get a yield out of the building that makes it work. But it's your building, not the responsibility of any individual tenant when it's split into flats. And I've got a suggestion for you. Your company, your group of companies, and I've just looked it up, have an incredible success rate, and their current turnover is, I'm just letting it run up, $43 billion. Now that's combined over your group of companies. But surely, Mr. Ravi, is it, the person that you claim is changing Freshwater's culture? Can he not see his way to perhaps providing a facility for every resident, and you can get the outcome you want and give them the opportunity by providing them with the finance to pay for these works, perhaps interest-free, because you have a liability of allowing this to go on. And this over the last decade is just one indicator. I don't want to get into having to drill down and say, well, in 1975 this, but I grew up here. That building opened 2 years after I was born. And all of my life, I've been aware of Freshwater as a landlord. Why? Because you've got a terrible reputation in the media. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but what I am saying is, let's take this opportunity to help our residents, help you repair what is a toxic situation with this building, and get the best outcome for everyone, for the community as a whole, for the individual residents, and for your company. I think the opportunity is there for you to turn this round, but as I say, you have to accept responsibility for enabling these people to protect their homes. Thank you.
I'm going to come to Councillor Wing.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, and thank you for everybody that's come, because maybe this is the first time that people have been round the table. It's interesting because I have a tower block in my ward in Central Harbour, as I know my colleagues have on the East Cliff, and I was able to, we triggered a site visit because there was concerns from residents. I live in the next street, so they constantly come and knock on my door, which is fine, and a lot of them were genuine concerns, but most of them have been addressed because there's this thing called lack of communication, which TDC has addressed. I think what we've got here is a lack of process of short, medium and long term. There is no plan which is shared and owned by all the stakeholders concerned. Central to that is the people that live there, because they have to live there. Everybody else goes home to their own home. And it does appear to me, I don't understand as soon as we can, because just looking at some of these problems, the situation with people with mobility problems and not having anywhere to go, that surely can be addressed tomorrow. That is a short-term fix that could be done in a matter of days or weeks. Identifying where they can go, putting those signs up, is something which should be done tomorrow or by the end of next week. And I know that's what was happening in our tower blocks. That's what wasn't happening in our tower blocks prior to TDC taking them back. And now we have a situation where residents seem to be central to TDC's process. They've been building a plan to deal with the problems that we have in our own tower blocks over the last 2 years, I think. It's slowly built up. The residents have been central to that process. It hasn't been without difficulties, because in my block there is a mixture of owners and tenants, so the financial situation has been problematic, but TDC have kept talking, kept negotiating, kept presenting information in as transparent a way as they can. And I think we come into the situation where the scaffolding's going up, the building is being refurbished. There are other things that are being done while the scaffolding's up because it's very expensive. And I'm getting less complaints from residents. And really, I have to praise TDC because they've kept listening to residents. It hasn't been easy on the financial front. And I know they've taken, at the end of it, there could have been a situation where if residents couldn't pay, and some of the figures were similar to your figures, there was a case of putting a charge against the building so people didn't lose their homes. And I was able to tell the residents that under no circumstances are TDC going to evict anybody if you can't pay. That they're the sort of reassurances you need to give your residents. You need to look at the things that you can do and fix tomorrow. You need to start really listening in an empathic way to all your residents. I've got great concerns, I mean, in the agenda item 3, and I learnt a lot yesterday from the technical guys about why our cladding needed to come off and why certain things were having to be done to the balcony to improve the thermal efficiency of the building. This is another thing that I think is shocking. A flat on each floor has no smoke detection or sounders. I find that quite shocking in the light of the recent incident in Hong Kong and Grenfell. I do find that quite shocking because I would imagine that is a relatively short fix. That isn't 4 years of planning, 4 years of fighting legal battles. That is something that can be done quite simply. The service ducts, I now understand a bit more about those. So they're running vertically, which means fire and smoke can move between floors. And fire compartmentation, I learnt a bit more about that yesterday from the technical guys on our tyre block. They're all really serious concerns. So it's about time, really, heads were banged together and people started sitting down and trying to work their way through this and develop an overall building management plan. Does one exist? Can I have a look at it? Could it be sent to us so we can look at what you presently plan to do? I don't know. There is one at TDC. Residents get updates on a monthly basis via little leaflets that go out. They have somebody to talk to on site. Some of this could be so easily begun to be worked through if only there would be a willingness of the owners of the building to take a different stance with the residents. It's not going to be easy going forward. It never is easy when there's financial considerations. But the key priority must be making that building as safe as possible.
Councillor Curry.
To Freshwater, a serious question. After all we've heard, would Freshwater consider a rebate on the costs of improvements, which go back years, to leaseholders?
I'm not sure that I fully understand the reasons for the request for a rebate.
The improvements needed are for repairs and problems that go back many, many decades. Some of the leaseholders have moved in the last few years, some 10 years ago. The costs of these repairs are astronomical, and as we've heard, could cause incredible problems for the people that live there, and as has been pointed out, these are their homes. Would Freshwater, as we've heard, they have a massive turnover, would Freshwater consider looking into a rebate on the costs of these improvements to leaseholders?
If the work had been done 10 years ago, as your colleagues suggested it might have been, then we would have been having this argument 10 years ago and not now. The point is, the work, whenever it is required, will always require funding. I hear what you say about rebates. I also noted what your lady colleague to your left mentioned about charges to secure funding. That is something we would consider. We don't want anybody to be thrown out of their homes. Absolutely not. I mean, we entirely appreciate that people live in the block and need security. Englishman's home is his castle, after all. So, yes, we will consider all options. But at the end of the day, the work has to be paid for, and it has to be funded.
Mr. Bell, can I just refer, I think Councillor Pope referred to a letter that you sent to Polly Billiton back in December, and I'll just read out a paragraph from it. And it says, the lessees have for many years been implacably hostile to all or any work that we have proposed. We had a plan to refurbish the building 15 years ago as part of a wider scheme involving Tesco's, which would have resulted in substantial improvements at our costs. Why were you going to pay for it back then and you won't pay for it now?
Because that was a scheme which we had brought forward, we had planning for, and we had a wonderful scheme to have a marvellous I think it was 50,000 square feet Tesco supermarket on the site of the car park. As part and parcel of that scheme, I believe at the encouragement of your council, we were requested to sort of improve the look of Arlington House so that it was a holistic part of a wider development site. So to a certain extent that was part of the price of obtaining that permission. The lessees objected to the planning consent. Once we had it, they sought a judicial review. When they lost, they went to the Court of Appeal. I believe when they lost that, they then petitioned the House of Lords, as it was then, now the Supreme Court, so that so much time went by, Tesco simply walked away because there was a long stop date in the commercial agreement with it.
So you were going to refurbish the whole building if people agreed to having a Tesco's built there, is that what you're saying?
It's a long time ago now. I think it was over 15 years ago. I wasn't intimately involved. I was aware that there was an issue regarding the windows, and I think that the incentive from our part was that we agreed to replace the windows at that time and to make the building look much better than it does now. I think it would involve jet washing the concrete panels, putting a brise soleil on the roof. But as I say, people objected to that. So we're here facing allegations that we've neglected the property. We've tried our best. We've obtained planning for a scheme, and that was opposed through the courts. So you can draw your own conclusions to that.
Okay, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a written statement here from David and Elizabeth Walker, but a lot of the comments are just about lack of communication again and again and again. Just want to highlight one paragraph from it and then ask some questions. In March 2023, both lists failed and were out of service for over 8 weeks. Elderly, disabled and vulnerable residents were effectively trapped in their homes, unable to leave the building without assistance. Access for carers, visitors and deliveries was severely compromised. The situation also had clear implications for emergency access and fire evacuation in the high-rise building. Freshwater made no efforts to arrange a meeting with residents or offer any consultation whatsoever. Where was the waking watch then? My questions, and I beg the Chair's permission to ask 4 questions actually, first to Bob and then to Freshwater. As the former tenant of Arlington House and as a ward councillor, I've been too familiar with Freshwater's management, and I put that in quotes. So the first question for Bob, and I expect this to just take 5 minutes of time, Chair. The first question to Bob, Director of Place, can you confirm if Arlington House is on TDC's service risk register and explain why, if it is?
I can confirm that it is on the service risk register for the Housing and Planning Service. The principal reason for that is the health and safety risks to residents. And I think there's 2 potential risk scenarios that would impact. One is an incident that led to harm to a resident. And the second one is if any of the regulatory bodies got to the point where they felt that there was a justification and need to serve a prohibition order, which obviously would then result in 140 flats being closed, and that obviously is a significant risk for the council and for the residents.
Thank you. And can you confirm if any TDC-owned tower blocks in Thanet have failed to be issued with a building safety certificate from the building safety regulator?
Well, the first step in tower blocks is that the building safety regulator calls in the building safety case report, and the certificate then follows the building safety case report, effectively says that the regulator is satisfied with what's set out in the building safety case report. obviously we speak closely to the BSR, and the applications for the major works in our tower blocks have all got live applications with the BSR. As it stands at the moment, they haven't actually yet requested our building safety case report, so we haven't got to that point.
Thank you. Sounds like they haven't got any concerns. So let's imagine that you were asked for a building safety case report and you failed to get a building safety certificate for TDC tower blocks. How seriously would you take that? And how seriously, how would you feel if 7 months after they had said you do not have a building safety certificate, you still did not have a building safety certificate? Personally, how would you feel?
Well, you know, I think the safety of our residents is absolutely our top priority, and personally I would feel really quite distressed about that. You know, the simple truth is that, and I think I need to say that our tower blocks have got issues within them, as all tower blocks have, and Councillor Davis, I think you made this point. However, we do have a plan of action. We've discussed and agreed that plan of action with the fire service and with the building safety regulator, and you know, and we are working hard to deliver that plan of action. You know, I think if we didn't have those things, I would, you know, I'd find that really difficult.
I guess my final question for you is, would you be worried that the chief exec who sat in this room today, Colin Carmichael, would look at you and consider firing you? Would you be worried about being fired if after 7 months you had not had a building safety certificate on a tower block?
Do I have to answer that? I'm always worried about that.
Thank you. Over to Mr. Bale. I've got 12 questions and I will be brief. And how long have you worked at Freshwater, and how many residential properties does Freshwater manage?
I have worked with Freshwater since 2014. We manage approximately 2,000 properties.
Thank you. Are you aware that Freshwater have hired Trinity Estates to support them with managing Arlington House?
Yes, the name rings a bell. When I first became involved with Arlington House, I was in private practice, and the lessees had sought to appoint a manager to manage the building. I believe that may have been Trinity Estates, and rather than go through with a LVT case as it was then, FTT now, we decided to agree to the lessee's choice of manager being appointed, and the lessee's choice of managing agent was duly installed.
So in 2015, Trinity Estates, and Councillor Davis has already highlighted this, Trinity Estates paid the engineering company Martech Technical Services Limited for a concrete survey report of Arlington House. In this report, with Trinity Estates' name on it, it says there's currently a health and safety issue with loose concrete fragments able to fall at any time. This must be addressed as soon as possible, and or the areas below cordoned off. Do you dispute that statement from 2015?
Councillor Yates, can I don't want to make it a conversation between yourself and Mr. O. If you just ask 2 or 3 questions at the same time, and then we can, because we're conscious of the time, that's all.
I don't have that report in front of me, so I'm not in a position to accept or deny it. But I accept that there is an issue with concrete spalling on the building. That is part of what we are seeking to address with the current proposed major works.
So in 2021, Freshwater Group, as Freshwater Group, commissioned another Martech Technical Services report into the condition of concrete of flat 12H. And in that report, which I've also got in front of me, which has Freshwater's name on it, page 9, It says repairs to flat 12H could be carried out in isolation. However, we would envisage the repairs to this flat would be carried out in conjunction with the previous concrete repairs required to the whole structure, as detailed in our previous report, reference 15084, dated 3rd of July 2015. So I've asked residents, when was the scaffolding put up around the building? And they've said the service charge says that the scaffolding was put up in 2022, October 2022. You have 2 reports from Martech which say this must be addressed as soon as possible, or areas below cordoned off, and you haven't done that for 7 years. What do you have to say?
You must remember that we only took over the management of this building in November 2024. We are addressing it, and we are currently proposing a scheme of works that will deal with the structural column of flat, I think it's 12H. Also, we are looking at doing any other dangerous parts of the concrete cladding that require refurbishment and dealing with at this stage. I can also add that we are proposing to get the scaffold erected fairly shortly now, with a view to taking advantage of the summer weather from July onwards to deal with this work.
So it sounds like you are saying that since 1st of February 2015, when Freshwater took over, you've got it under control. So the statement here from David and Elizabeth Walker says, the building has received 2 serious BSR compliance notices. Freshwater's made no attempt to meet with residents about this. A 24-hour waking watch was instigated in March 2025. Freshwater made no attempts to meet with residents to discuss this. TDC issued a hazard awareness notice in August last year when you were responsible. Freshwater's made no attempts to meet with residents about this. During the past year, 3 Service 20 notices have been issued relating to structural and fire safety of the building. 50 written questions about these works remain unanswered. This is from David and Elizabeth Walker. A resident engagement strategy was issued. Freshwater has made no attempts to meet with residents except for the meeting that I was at 2 weeks ago, where members of your group walked out half an hour before the end of the meeting. In April 2025, over a period of 4 weeks, a film production company was allowed to occupy common parts of the building and the escape routes to film The Dreamlands. Residents received no correspondence about that filming taking place on our property and no information about alternative escape arrangements from Freshwater. In March 2025, residents were instructed to remove immersion heaters from their risers without evidence or lawful basis. When this was challenged, residents were threatened with legal action rather than engage in dialogue. That's how you behave. You threaten with legal action rather than engage in dialogue. That's March 2025. After the point where you're saying, actually, we took over then, we got it under control. You threaten residents with legal action. Before Freshwater resumed management, they were responsible for a planning application for replacement windows that received 250 objections and no letters of support. Freshwater made no attempt to meet with residents. The only residents' meeting ever organised by Freshwater occurred a full year into their management. It was held at an inconvenient time, did not address the safety issues in the building, no substantive contribution was made by Freshwater representatives, and the meeting was cut short without explanation. This is not a story of poor communication, this is a pattern of avoiding, ignoring and disregarding residents entirely. And I've mentioned the point about the lifts. And this is the end of the statement, so thank you for your time. The question from Dave and Elizabeth Walker is why, year on year, Freshwater, the head lessee, and now managing agent of a high-risk tower block, have failed to meaningfully engage with the people who live in the Arlington house to explain what is happening to their homes, their safety, and their lives. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Yates, you raise a great number of questions. We do like to engage with our residents and tenants. We do so across our portfolio. We have numerous meetings with residents' associations. Some we get on very well with, others we don't. The meeting you referred to that was cut short, the chair himself was there last month and said it wasn't a particularly well-conducted meeting, and it became unruly. There seemed no point in remaining there in those circumstances. All I can assure you is that we are fully cognizant of all the issues with the building. We are getting more and more surveys on a monthly basis. We are engaging and liaising with all of the regulators. We had a meeting with the building safety regulator last week. We are in regular touch with all the other stakeholders. We need to get on and manage this building. I would love to think that we could spend absolutely hours every week meeting with the lessees and the residents, but it's just not possible. We have, as I've indicated earlier, 2,000 buildings to manage in our portfolio. We spend an enormous amount of management time and resources on Arlington House. It is certainly top of our focus. It is in our thoughts every day. We are doing what we can to improve the building. We've got a scheme of work. I've got professionals with me today to deal with any specific questions on safety compliance and the nature of the building repairs that we're instructed. What I've tended to hear is let's have a go at freshwater attack on us, and I don't think that's fair. I think that it is very, very easy to be critical, to draw up lists of complaints. It is not so easy to manage a building of this age and complexity in the light of current regulatory standards. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bell. Okay, so everyone's let off a little bit still. I just want to move on a little bit. And
Can I just very briefly come back?
I will come back. Can I come to Mr. Thorpe? Because I know you gave a good presentation at the residents' meeting. Can you give us just a brief overview of the work that's going to take place so everybody can understand? Briefly,
Yeah,
thank you.
so in essence, the scope of works is we're renewing the main roof, the tank house roof, and also the main common parts entrance roof. We'll be cleaning down the concrete, undertaking concrete repairs, and then treating the concrete to ensure it's like an anti-carbonation paint to give it an improved endurance in the long term. That'll come with a 15-year guarantee. We're doing strengthening works to the column around 12H, which has had a particularly bad amount of spalling on that location. We'll be overhauling the windows, which will include renewing the gaskets to ensure they're weather tight and cleaning them.
Could you speak up in the mic so we can hear you?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So what's the approximate date that you intend to start work?
Well, as Martin just alluded to, we're engaging with the contractor at the moment, and we intend to put up the scaffolding in the next month or so.
And that scaffolding, so apparently it's going to cost them roughly about £1 million, the scaffolding. Will residents have to pay towards that before it goes up, or is that just going to be coming to the £40,000 at a later date, or how's that going to be paid for?
I don't deal with all the service charge aspects. Yeah. Oh.
Yes, I rather thought you were, Mr. Chair. We are proceeding with the scaffolding because there are aspects of the building which cannot wait until we manage to present our case to the tribunal, which we believe will be in the last week of June. Because it will take 3 to 4 months to scaffold the building in its entirety, we think it better to start now so that we are hopefully in a position to proceed early July, as soon as we have the tribunal's decision.
At the residents' meeting, I'm not sure if it was clear or it wasn't clear if there is now a current building manager in place now. I think one person said you were recruiting, another person said there was already someone in place. I think we've got a clear answer there.
Yes. We did recruit an individual who is sitting at the back with his hand up. He started on Monday, so I think his first meeting was our regular Monday morning meeting about Arlington House, so he's here today just to look, learn and listen. He does have a space reserved, but we thought we would not expose him to the firing line just at this stage.
Okay, and does Ashley live locally? Okay, so when the works are taking place, will you be on site every day to discuss issues with residents?
No, it's not possible to be on site every day. We have a caretaker who is on site every day, who acts as a conduit. We also have a fully staffed area office in Croydon, headed by my colleague to my left, Suzanne Calvo. And we will respond as and when required.
Okay. And members, Councillor Bayford.
Thank you. Returning to resident safety, which for me is paramount, I refer to the building inspection on the 29th of January this year, which revealed that the Waking Watch had been stood down due to the installation of a whole new building fire alarm and detector system. It was the council that informed Kent Fire and Rescue of this change, as it was unaware of the change. Could you explain why they hadn't been informed of this change, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I think there's been, whatever the communication breakdown, they were communicated to. They were communicated to through the area office prior to the removal of the Waking Watch. They were shared the letter that was issued to residents, and I subsequently emailed a point of contact at Kent Fire prior to the 20th of January as well. And I've subsequently had the conversation with, I think it's Mr. Vaughan from Kent Fire a couple of Fridays ago, where at that point they appeared frustrated that they hadn't been communicated, and I explained that we had, and we resent the communication. I've not heard back, but at that point of conversation, from my point of view, he was satisfied that we had made those prior communications.
I just feel this is so important, because there would have been complete confusion should a fire have arisen. So surely something like this has to be categorically determined. You know, not to know whether they've been informed or not does not seem to be satisfactory.
No, I agree, but not to get around that point yet. The point is they were made aware, and obviously the residents were made aware through a formal letter in regards to reinforcing the simultaneous evacuation. The evacuation notices were amended and re-put up. There's always more work to do in regards to supporting and instructing and guiding on general fire safety, and I think that links to the points in regards to where significant improvements need to improve in resident engagement. And the councillor behind you, your name tag is I can't see. So yeah, I think I just, without sort of stealing the floor, I agree with the points that you make in regards to the health and safety now, the health and safety today. I'm here to support Freshwater and the wider compliance team are working across different areas. Last couple of months, more so with Arlington. That's what my focus and purpose is. I'm directly engaged with Kent Fire. They've got my phone number, email addresses. We're sharing information. I met with Mr. Bray from the housing team and his colleagues on the 29th. I personally met. I'm based up in Leicester. I came down, as I've come today. I walked around with them. We've taken on board some of the notices in regards to some of the additional potential concerns. I've directly engaged with contractors. I'm doing what I can as reasonably, as quickly as I can to address those. We're also looking, I've also worked with another external consultant company called Safety Case Partnership. We're heavily engaged with them over the last couple of months. Their expertise in regards to the building safety case reports, So they're helping us not only recollate that because of obviously the transition out from PSNB a year or so ago, that needs to reflect fresh water for that resubmittal in due course, or to keep it as a live document. But also we're developing that plan, that strategy, we're there or thereabouts now in terms of having a clear, it covers what's happened in the past, but it's trying to determine what all those challenges are. And then the next phase of that will be a hazard identification risk assessment workshop, a HIRA workshop. That's the communication that we've given to the building safety regulator that I have a direct engagement with, and we met with them a week or so ago, and I'm sure that they conveyed that to you in the meeting yesterday. What will happen is that we'll bring all the relevant parties into a room, so the people that did the fire risk assessment, Tetra who do the fire compartmentation survey, all the relevant people from Freshwater, all those people that over the past months, years have sent an email, done this and that, will bring everyone into a room in a constructive format, and we'll go through and we'll talk about those risks. And what will come out at the end of that is a formal risk assessment, a formal plan, and we've committed, I think, to the building safety regulator, I believe, to deliver that in March. I believe, I need to check my notes, but I believe that we have clearly committed to the building safety regulator. And as I said, I'm in communication with Mr. Bray, and I'm not focused on what's happened in the past. I can't attest. I've only been supporting this for the last couple of months, but I know, as Martin has indicated, we're meeting more than a few times a week, a few hours at a time. The right people are in the room on those meetings, the right people are engaged, and we've still got the compartmentation element. We still need to really, not better understand, but just determine how we can move this forward based that it's all retrospective work. So I've met with some of the residents, I stayed behind after the meeting. I think we acknowledge that we can learn lessons from that meeting in terms of how we can structure that and how we can manage potentially some of the hostility and some of the emotive subjects within that meeting, and we will learn from that. From a personal point of view, I've seen the resident engagement strategy. We're doing a wider piece across the company, but I'll say this quite openly. A document, a piece of paper is irrelevant if you haven't got the people that are determined to engage directly with the residents. Now that's going to be partially me going forward, partially the new property manager, Suzanne. The relevant people that can really engage, not to make excuses, not to tell a story, but can listen and understand and give transparent answers as to the best of our ability. And I'm confident that going forward over the next few weeks and next few months that we will see those improvements. And like I said, I'm engaged directly with the contractors in regards to those remedial works that have been highlighted in the most recent visit, to show that we are absolutely committed to moving forward. And then where we can, take those steps to make the building feel better on a day-to-day basis.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, that was pleasing to hear, frankly. And I'm sorry if you feel hearing from your residents is having a go at you. I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's really important part of the function here for you to hear what your residents think of you. But I'd like to focus on a specific, and that's the report that TDC produced that Bob said was, I think, was April last year, and the notices that they served on you. What have you done to meet those?
So bear with me just whilst I've got my notes, but I won't read them verbatim. But so in terms of my direct involvement and where I'm trying to verify those works. So for example, there was a fire compartmentation survey carried out by a company, a third-party company called Tetra, and I think that was August 2025, and there was around, I think, 90 plus issues identified, so compartmentation issues, and just for the benefit of all, a compartmentation issue in a lot of them were in the communal areas, the high number in the communal areas, and they would be in electrical cupboards or certain areas where penetrations have been made from wires, cabling, etc., and maybe there's holes around them so a fire could spread. So approximately, I think 84, again, I'm not looking at my notes, 84 or so were done over the last few months. So sealing those penetrations by a company called Hudson's, who I'm now engaged with, because I didn't arrange the work, so I wasn't with Freshwater at that time supporting them. What we're doing to ensure that is that we've asked Ketra to come back in imminently, should be next week hopefully, to verify 100% of the works, to verify the quality. We're also asking them to produce a clear asset register of those works, so we can always go back to them, check them and refer to them. There are I think 7 or 8 outstanding compartmentation works in some of the communal areas. Again, I'm in contact with Hudson's. They're coming to site on Monday next week to further investigate. They've got the pictures, and they'll hopefully make those amendments and those actions on the compartmentation to try and get all those communal area compartmentation. There are some challenges still in regards to some of the flats that Tetra were able to identify and access. So they did a 10% sample survey. So they accessed, say, 14 flats out of the 140, 142. And there are some aspects there that we're still trying to verify in terms of what those remedial actions would look like and how that would be represented in all those other flats, given it was a 10% sampling. So we're asking them to come back to do some further exploratory work. Now, all of this will link in to the HIRA workshop, so the hazard identification workshop. So once we've got this information, we'll look clearly at what we can do. There's also, I met with a month or so ago, I'm not managing it, but we're engaged with some contractors in regards to an overarching brand new sprinkler system. So they're in the early feasibility stage as well. But we're not just going down one path of sprinkler system, because we understand that the risk of the compartmentation also needs to be addressed at. So again, all feeding into the HIRA workshop, we'll have the clear and concise information, and we'll come out the other end with some options, a plan of understanding how we move that compliance forward.
And is part of the process that you'll inform TDC as you meet their requirements of the notices?
Yeah, absolutely. We've informed the building safety regulator of this process, and then furthermore, we'll formally be communicating that to Thanet, to the fire authority, to make sure, and ultimately when we come out with a paper plan, a document, and we'll obviously circulate that, and ultimately that document is holding ourselves to account, and it will be there in the domain to support that process, to support that involvement as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Matterface.
I just want to ask, Chair, do we have the authority to invite Freshwater to come back in, say, 6 months or a year, so we can have an update on where they've got with these various things, or is that out with the scope of this committee?
Yeah, we can absolutely invite them. It's up to them if they want to come back. I hope they're not to abuse the day to want to come back, and I'm sure they will want to come back.
Quick. One of the things that's come out very strongly appears to be lack of communication, lack of clear communication. You said everybody in the building got a letter about what was happening, but are you taking into account that you may have people in that building who possibly have literacy issues, possibly because some properties are obviously legally let, may not have particularly good English qualifications, or may be visually impaired? I mean, is that taken into account in your communication? Because we know as councillors, one of the big issues for a lot of our residents is they get paperwork through the door, they don't want to deal with it because they either aren't capable or they're worried what might be in there. So can you guarantee any communication goes out is in good, clean, clear English, taking account of anybody's specific issues?
Yes, I would like to think that our communications are clear and concise. We have email addresses for people, most people. We send letters to those flats where we know people will receive them. We know that there is an active residents association, so we would hope that through a communication of all, combination of all that we will be able to get information across clearly and concisely.
But what about, I mean, the language is an issue. So basically you're saying belt and braces, but do you get much feedback? I mean, you're saying about email, obviously those people are capable of dealing with letters, but do you get feedback, people saying thanks for the email? I mean, that's not necessarily your job, but I mean, this is crucial that you can then say to us, residents have received the letter, they've received the email, they've responded, they know what's going on. Because if they don't, there is obviously a major issue.
I think just to sort of emphasise, and just from my angle in terms of, I think your point is the efficiency of the resident engagement, which I think has been touched on. And again, I can't attest for what's previously been circulated in regard to resident engagement strategy, but what I would give you assurances on that we have recently done some work across freshwater with a more formal resident-friendly resident engagement strategy. We were working to a point with a consultant, and we've then taken that information on board. We've got a kind of a really strong template. Now, obviously I can't share that, but we can ultimately share it in due course. And one of the key factors around that it's not a solid word-by-word Word document. It's a friendly presentation, paper-based presentation, which then you can pull up on your iPad or your phone, your tablet. There's work to do, so it's not done, but we hope to involve that over the coming weeks and months. The key element to all of that is working with the different teams within freshwater. Again, I'm not familiar with the lease team, etc., but my driving force behind that, and again, the relevant people within the compliance team and freshwater, is the training and the focus around how you then go and engage. Now, I'm more than happy, time allowed, to go and engage with every resident committee, but that would be wrong of me as my individual status to do that. But I think I can help and guide that process, and I've seen within freshwater they are committed to that. There's a big focus on that resident engagement piece, but ultimately I absolutely accept and acknowledge it comes down to the ultimate delivery. I'm familiar with the caretaker on site, Mitch. I've spent some time with him over the last couple of weeks. I think he's highly engaging, and I think there are routes of communication. You can call it informal if you like. So I think there's key points there. Obviously, the new property manager, Suzanne, myself. I think when we get this strategy revised and right, I think I would certainly advocate myself working with the team to go and meet Mr. and Mrs. Walker, meet a Better Arlington, meet the resident association, and maybe have some uncomfortable conversations, but have some honest conversations and try and get to this point to when we do issue it, we're covering all aspects of residents in terms of nationality, any other issues or challenges that we can.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Matterface has taken a lot of the point I was going to start with, which is communication seems to be the flaw throughout this process, and I'm not talking about you guys there, I'm talking about from the 60s onwards. Would, if we were to, because we can't force you to come back, but would freshwater be, it could be the building manager, it doesn't have to be the full Monty big guns, but would you be prepared to come back in perhaps 6 months to give us an update on progress, because by then scaffolding should have taken place. It doesn't have to be, oh yeah, it's all done, but by establishing that regular contact, I think we can resolve a lot of the concerns that people have, because as I say, you seem to want to communicate today, despite the horror stories of walking off from meetings, which I guess we've all done at times. We have to, like I said, we have to find a fresh approach and a way forward, and that applies to everybody concerned, residents as well, because I'm sure they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I would very much support, firstly, a follow-up, as I say, even if it's a sort of just an informal visit to one of our ONS from one of your officers. I would say that it also, hopefully, what we've got from today is perhaps to make this a little more real, because in my previous comments I said to you, These are their homes, not just an asset. And it's very difficult when you're working in any environment. Doctors lose empathy because they see people so ill all the time that they forget to show what they're really feeling. And I think that can apply to us all. But if Freshwater can adopt a fresher approach, I think that will be very welcome with your residents, and maybe a corner can be turned here where we can all work together collaboratively. And wouldn't it be wonderful in the next couple of years to see that building as the white monolith that it was designed to be? I'm presuming your paint's going to be similar to the original finish, but thank you for coming today. I think this is important, and that's not to undermine the absolute anger and palpable anger of residents, and I don't want them to think that I'm trying to diminish that. But what I am saying is, war achieves nothing, jaw gets an outcome. And if we can establish a better platform from today, which we might be able to help maybe once every 6 months just being here, then I think there's a positive outcome possible. And wouldn't it be great to see that site tidied up, for anybody's thoughts and purposes. But thank you for coming today, because it is appreciated.
I'd like to thank the councillor for his helpful and constructive comments. Yes, we would love to turn a new leaf. We would love to have a better engagement with the residents and lessees. I'm willing to ensure that we do all that we can to make that happen. There is hostility towards us. I think you've appreciated that. And that gets in the way of a constructive dialogue. I regret it, and I don't know what we can do more as a company to alleviate that anger. I heard it very passionately from the lady at the end of this bench, and I deeply regret that anyone should feel that way. We want to move forward. We want to be engaged. We are engaged with various council departments and officers, as I think has been made clear. We would love to transform not only Arlington House, but also the square and the car park. We have had discussions with nationally known and renowned operators for a hotel and a supermarket on the site, but they are very, very early discussions, and like anything, it's got to be viable, because despite reports to the contrary, we're not completely made of money in this company. We have assets, but we also have to fund for our expenditure. We have to take commercial loans like any other company, and we have to make sure that we spend wisely. But in terms of coming back, we would be prepared to do so. 6 months is probably a little bit too early, because what we hope to achieve is some substantive work starting towards the middle of the summer, maybe end of the summer. Well, hopefully not too much towards the end, but we would love to make a start on getting this building sorted out. And I suspect that we will have dialogue with a number of council members during that process, and it's not going to be easy. And I just would hope that everybody in this room appreciates that we are doing our best, and it is not easy.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, and it's good to hear that there are plans for the wider site. I was going to come on to that when we finish. I mean, I think when I wanted to set this meeting up, and Emily helped set this meeting up, I think it's important that we made it constructive. I didn't want it to be a freshwater bashing operation. I wanted this to see that this could be a new start of laying the groundworks for a new relationship between yourselves and the residents. And if I could give one recommendation to you, is to reconvene that residents' association meeting, properly manage it. Offer to come and chair it for you if you want. I think the engagement with your residents has to be number one. I think that last meeting was a bit of a shambles, really. I've got hands up everywhere. I'll come to Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Bale talks. I think we as council need to look at risk risk. There's been a lot of words, and I actually believe Philip Leeseman when he talks about needing a clear strategy, but the building safety regulator were met with yesterday by our director of place, and they're still not happy. Like, the building safety regulator said 7 months ago, we're not issuing a building safety certificate. Right, today, you've given us nice words. There's no outcomes. So when it comes to hostility, does Mr. Bale not understand why people are hostile? The council has issued a hazard awareness certificate, not complied with. The building safety regulator have said we're not issuing a building safety certificate. 7 months later, you still haven't managed to get that building safety certificate. I do not think that your company is fit for purpose, and I do not say that lightly. So I'd like to move a recommendation tonight, and I do this, and I've had help drafting this by a professional environmental health officer with decades of experience enforcing the health and safety of private companies for councils. So that's their role. They've got qualifications. The recommendation is this: an experienced independent third party assess whether Freshwater or Metropolitan Management Company are fit for purpose in managing Arlington House and report back as soon as practicable. Why is that the recommendation? Because we need outcomes and not words. You should have come here today with the building safety certificate. It's still not in place. You should have come here having complied with the hazard awareness certificates issued. Still not done. We cannot take you on your word. So this is why this recommendation is so important. An external company, professional, goes away and looks at whether your management of Arlington House is fit for purpose. And why that language? Fit for purpose is a strong and concise legal term, widely recognised in commercial and contract law. And it gives you an opportunity. You say you are good at your job. You say you're not neglecting the building. Well, let's see if an independent third party can prove that to be the case, because I do not believe it. And if it is shown that Freshwater are not fit for purpose, then imagine Cabinet may want to explore the legal ramifications of this with the building safety regulator. So I move that recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, we come to the recommendation in a short while. I saw some hands, Councillor Wing.
Again, I want to give you some advice, actually, and it's based on my 2 years of the experience of TDC in our own tower blocks, and it seems to me that there are common barriers that created grief, if you like, and those barriers seem to be around finance, the complexity of the design. I'm quite happy for anybody on TDC to say otherwise, and also the designs sometimes, because certainly some of the complaints I had from residents were initially around the bill that dropped on their door with very little information about and very little breakdown, which created a huge amount of stress for the leaseholders. We're moving through that because that's part of the process. The key thing is getting the building compliant and better, which should be the main priority for everybody. So designs were also a problem because the residents couldn't understand why some works were being done to the balconies, which they thought just needed to be refurbished, but actually once we talked to TDC, they were exploiting the benefit of having the scaffolding up, £1 million worth of scaffolding across the tower blocks. It would make sense to do some other works that might need doing in 2 years' time rather than spending another £1 million on scaffolding going up. And it all revolved around communication. And I think we've sort of moved to a much better position where there's an obvious plan that is articulated in a clear way to residents. I'm getting less people sort of contacting me. TDC have kept the ward councillors involved. We did a site visit yesterday, which was really interesting. Residents are offered the same. There's monthly meetings. There's somebody on site now. The building started because you're going to hit more problems once you put that scaffolding up and start restricting windows. Residents need to understand why you do things. You know, you can't just dump a bill on their doorstep and say we need 30,000 or 20,000. They want to know why they're paying that much, and they have a right to know that. So my advice would be, these are just suggestions, talk to TDC about their issues that the issues that TDC were hit with in trying to do a complex build on a building where you've got leaseholders and tenants with very different needs. Appoint a local person. You know, there is so much indirect communication that happens between TDC on the ground workers and the people living in the block, that it all and ward councillors, that between us we're able to part with the information and the process. In terms of the finance, make it clear that TDC have done individual meetings with every resident in the tower block where I am. So there is an individual financial plan which is worked out for every person. There is no threat of anybody being kicked out of their home, and there is no threat of impoverishing people. You know, we've had people who've actually become unemployed since this bill was dropped, and TDC have gone back in and worked through those that personal situation with that person. And you know, at the end of the day, if people can't work out a payment plan, there is the option to put a charge against the property so that nobody is impoverished and nobody's losing their home. So, you know, talk to TDC about their experiences and try and appoint somebody locally that can have those everyday conversations, particularly once your build starts. Because I get the feeling that everybody wants to get to the same place, but at the moment the residents are undergoing a huge amount of anxiety around what is going to happen to them.
Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. I have been making various little questions and notes of my own as I've been listening, and I apologise, I'm going to go back to something earlier, but it's obviously taken many years to get to this position, and the solutions are going to be costly and take time to put into place. I'd like to thank Councillor Matterface for her suggestion and the other support for asking you to come back. I was thinking 9 months to a year. I'm inclined to go around the 9 months mark. I would think that would be realistic. I was also going to ask Mr. Porter about monitoring of what was going on, and I think you've already answered that. And we've had some good suggestions about the relationships, and also it's very positive to hear about the works that are starting. But my concern that I do still have is the impact on both the tenants and the leaseholders with regard to the cost. I don't think we got to the end of that in the earlier discussion, and it seems as if the owners of the property are very much entrenched in the people who live there are going to be paying for this. The reality is, if a third of the residents in that property are leaseholders, and even if only half of those can't raise a mortgage for one reason or another and can't sell their property, then you declined to use the ultimate word. You held back from it, but I'm sure in everybody's head it's legal prosecution. And that has got to be a fear that is going to be amongst those residents in there. I'd like, and if you go down that line, then my question would be, how do you cover the cost that they can't pay? Do you then distribute it among the other leaseholders and through the service charges of the residents so that they have to pay more? Or do you find another solution to raising that money in some other way? Now, I don't particularly expect you to answer that question now, but I think that is something that will be a fear in the minds of the residents who are already there, because we know that that sum of money not everybody is going to be able to do. If they can't sell the property, and if they end up homeless, then we come back to our homeless situation at Thanet District Council. But those are very, very real issues for very small individual people up against a very, very, very large company. And I'd like you to take away and think about how you can reassure all of your residents that this bill is not going to go up and up and up because of things outside of their control. Thank you.
The bill shouldn't go up and up and up, and the position is that everyone is responsible for their share of the service charge. So if someone can't pay, then their share won't get added to anyone else's service charge bill, because that's not the way it works. If someone can't pay, it will remain a debt due to the company. The practical suggestion from the lady councillor at the rear was that charges could be given over property to secure payment on a payment plan. That is always the first recourse if someone is unable to pay. Legal action, believe you me, is the very, 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 very last option that we would look at, and I can say that categorically.
Do you know, that's the answer I was waiting for you to say early on, and you didn't give that option. Councillor Scrutiny.
And I was just going to say thank you for those reassurances, because I think you left us hanging with a fear of being prosecuted earlier, and I just wanted to draw that out. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crittenden.
We don't want to prosecute, as you put it, anyone. We just want to be able to do our scheme of work and have the resources to pay for it. And as I've said before, we will be paying a quarter of the cost, so we will be looking to make sure we spend our money wisely, as always.
Oh, I'm seconded.
So, if there's no more questions, I'm going to go back to the recommendation that Councillor Yates has made, and we've all got it written down here.
I had service ducks in my head.
Are you got a proposer and a seconder for this recommendation? So you're proposing it. Councillor Wing is seconding it.
Councillor Wing seconding it.
Okay. Then we will progress that to Cabinet future.
Chair, it doesn't have to be a vote.
Sorry, Councillor Yates, I've just been told, can you go back to your recommendation and just read it out and ask how you want to progress this? I presume you want to progress it to Cabinet. You need to actually add that in.
And report back to Cabinet as soon as practicable. Add that into the last page. So the full wording is an experienced, independent third party assess whether Freshwater/Metropolitan Management Company are fit for purpose in managing Arlington House, and report back to Cabinet as soon as practicable.
And your seconder for that is Councillor Wing.
I'm going to ask whether it was seconded, and it is now. I'd like advice, before we vote on that, whether it's within TDC's powers to do that.
That I wouldn't know. I'm going to turn to Mr. Hughes. I'm going to turn to Bob.
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think we would need to take some time to explore the legal issues related to that, to be sure whether it is or it isn't within our powers. It's not within our standard housing powers, that's for sure, and I think it kind of, the fact that Freshwater are the leaseholder and effectively in control of the building, is part of that consideration. The other question I would have is who the panel are recommending pays for that work. But if we've got some legal advice, that would be helpful.
Joseph.
Yeah, thank you. We can recommend it, but whether we can enforce it, I think that's the main issue. And that is something that we would have to look into. I think the issue that we have as well is the main question itself, which is the company fit for purpose? I'm not sure whether your main recommendation is to whether they are a reasonable and suitable person to run or to manage. But to answer your question, we can recommend it, but whether we can enforce it, I think that's a totally different question as well.
Okay, so it's been recommended, it's been proposed and seconded. Do we all agree on this recommendation? Can we have a
vote?
Can we have a debate?
Did you want to speak on it, Councillor Green, or do you just want to vote on it?
Personally, I don't think this is the best way forward. I think what's been sort of suggested during the debate, that our guests take note of what's been said here and carry out their plan and come back in 9 months' time. And we note progress.
Yeah, I think it's clear here that actions are going to speak louder than words, and I think Freshwater are clearly going to take action now, and look, we are looking at this recommendation. Can we all? So all in favour of this recommendation going forward?
Is it possible to come back on the legal advice, just briefly?
Briefly, yeah.
So the important thing here is we could come back in a year and let's say the building safety regulator is still not happy. We've wasted a year. The building safety regulator let them know 7 months ago there were issues, 7 months. They've known about this meeting for 3 months. Hazard awareness certificate still not complied with. Building safety regulator certificate still not in place. What more, they haven't done any of the major compliance issues according to the BSR. The BSR met with TDC yesterday, still not complied with. What more do we need to say, actually, let's look into whether this company is fit for purpose? Because I get we want them to be a success, we want that work, but I don't believe them. I've been ward councillor and a resident there since 2017. I'm imploring you to just believe me, because they are terrible. We've heard from resident today, 8 weeks with no functioning lifts, 18 stories. Think of the residents. We need to send a message today to companies like Freshwater that we will call you out. And when it comes to the legal issue, I think you're right. Maybe the point is we get a report back saying Freshwater, Metropolitan are not fit for purpose. We give it to the building safety regulator, say you're in charge, but TDC as the freeholder, we are involved in this and we should not forget that. Thank you.
I mean, we've heard today, we've got Stephen there who said work's going to commence, the contractors is out to tender. We've got a health and safety person there who's telling us all the things that are going to happen. We have to take them out of the word at this point. It seems like action is happening.
Words.
I know you we can't keep talking about the past. We have to look to the future, and this is what we wanted to get today. And we are trying to get some reassurances, and I think they're giving the reassurances. Yes, I will happily vote on this, and that can be taken forward. But we have to trust them on this occasion. I think they know that they have to take action. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair. I think whilst I'm all, as everybody knows, for full accountability and not the most tolerant of people sometimes, I think we've had a meaningful dialogue today and are looking for a progressive, mutually satisfactory relationship. And the fact that Freshwater have said they'll come back and have further dialogue. Joseph highlighted the fact that whilst we may be able to do this, we haven't got actually any enforcement powers on it anyway. But as a business consultant in my past and a compliance officer, I'd have to ask what is yes, it's a powerful phrase, not fit for purpose, but you have to have the basis for that. Is it because of financial aspects? Is it because of health and safety? It's not just a catch-all, you're not, we can all not be fit for purpose in someone else's opinion. But there is no track to deliver a decision on that, and there's no outcome from that decision. And given the financial pressures this council's under, I think it would be a bit unnecessary to be spending money on third parties to come up with their opinion, which isn't enforceable in the first place anyway, whether we like it or not. What I would be far happier to see those resources put into is maintaining meaningful dialogue. Mr. Bale is the company secretary, let's remember, for Freshwater, so his word should not be taken too lightly, because he has a legal responsibility to speak on behalf of the company, but also his co-directors. The buck stops with that man there, and I think the fact he's been prepared to come and put himself in that position, we must respect it, and I don't think we need to be, I think this, I understand, and I don't want to in any way undermine the strength of feeling that anybody's got, and I think you're quite right to feel like that up to this point. But surely the purpose of this meeting is to try and change the way things are progressing and establish a new and better dialogue. Because as you said when this meeting was agreed to, it's not going to be a you, because that achieves absolutely zip all other than a continuation of 50 years of misery, which is what seems to be, have been going on here. So let's work for the people's benefit, which is to get a positive outcome, and those who perhaps have frustrated people in the past, I think, have listened today and shown a willingness to work with us. So I'm afraid I won't be supporting the amendment.
Okay, I don't want to debate this any further. I think we just take a vote on it.
Well, I'm sorry for jumping in there.
Councillor Crittenden, one last comment on this.
Thank you. I'm going to use a lot less words on it. I do think that it's been very positive today. I cannot support the motion, but I am going to say that I think we should actually hear perhaps from Mr. Porter in about 3 months' time as to an interim progress when we might want to reconsider how things are going, and then as we've already got agreement with Freshwater that they will come back and that we take it in those staged processes. So my vote will reflect the fact that I think it would be helpful to have an interim sense of progress from the officers with an invitation to Freshwater in 9 months' time. But that's my hope, and that will reflect. Thank you very much for the last words.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, so can we just have a show of hands? Who's in favour of this motion? Oh, so you seconded it, Councillor. Okay, and against? 6. And abstain? Okay, so that's lost, unfortunately.
I think just to be, Councillor Crittenden did make a valid recommendation, and I think we can hopefully all approve that tonight, which is for Mr. Porter to come back in 3 months.
I think this meeting is the start of a new road.
But if Councillor Crittenden wants to make that recommendation, I'm happy to second it.
We are going to open dialogue. We keep dialogue. We keep in touch with Freshwater. Freshwater, I'm sure, want to keep in touch with us now and tell us all the wonderful things they're going to be doing down there, and invite us to a meeting down there, or come back and have a meeting here, informally or formally. And I'm sure they're happy to do that. We are. That's
do
my
appear-
recommendation as well. So
Yeah, so I mean, I suggested it, but if I make it a recommendation, we certainly have a
I'll
seconder
second
for
that.
it. So then can we take that one forward as a
Okay, and
motion?
all in favour of inviting Freshwater back at a future date? That's carried.
And feedback from Mr. Porter at 3 months.
Carried. Are we all done?
If I could just remind people of what I think it was Mr. Lissaman said about time frames, and Councillor Crittenden just said about 9 months. Perhaps we should be looking at, a Halloween timed update there around about the end of October, beginning of November, and if we could,
Okay, no, we don't have that. Can we just not have a discussion about that
so
right
I'm
now? We
saying-
will keep in touch.
But if we
all-
could put that into
Yes,
the
Councillor.
proposal.
Councillor
that we
Davis. Yes. Turn your microphone off.
Sorry, 9 months ago, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, members. Thank you, people from Freshwater. Thank you, officers. Thank you, members of the public, for your time today. I hope you got some answers. I hope there is a residents' association meeting again